Oh man, we are live once more, and I still don't have any pants on, so oh well. My name is Daniel Crosier. This is COFOH Live Undead, and I'm here with my guests, Terri Lubaroff and David Baxter. But first,
something on my face.
Do we need
Terri, David, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, Danielle.
Great.
Yeah.
What an introduction. I feel like we need to die from all that blood.
And Cheddar Goblin sends his regards as well.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, luckily I scrub off pretty nicely, but in these times of COVID, though, everything just tends to grow back anyway. Terri, you're the COO and Head of Content for Legion M, and David, you're the VP of Development. Thanks for coming on the show and talking a little bit more about what you guys do and all the cool Legion M stuff. I'm a big fan. I think I learned of you like something like 4 or 5 years ago, just when COLOSSAL was coming out.
Oh wow! So you've known about us since the very beginning. That's when we started 4.5 years ago.
Oh, cool. And Jeff Aniston, I think, is a founder, and I think there's another gentleman,
Paul Scanlon. Yep, Jeff is our president. Paul Scanlon's the CEO, and they're the co-founders.
Oh man, that's awesome. I think I started investing in Legion M when MANDY came out. I was watching, which of course David's Goblin is from. So I absolutely love that movie. Fell in love with it. It's so metal, all that prog rock, and just seeing Nicolas Cage do his best Jason Voorhees performance. I mean, it was quite awe-inspiring.
I think you can see the axe from the film right above in the background.
Oh my God, it's so cool. Can you give us a little bit of background, Terri? Well, I'll start with you. How did you come about to be in film and then also make your way to Legion M?
Oh wow! I feel like it's a long story. I'll try to keep it short. I was born loving movies. Like there was nothing I liked more than movies. And my parents say since the time I was 2 years old, I said I wanted to be working in the movies. And my earliest influence, I think, was Jaws. I saw Jaws when I was like 2 years old, and I've loved movies ever since. So I studied theater and acting and directing, and I went from Ohio to Florida, and then made my way out to California. And I've worked at talent agencies and production companies, and I'm a lawyer by education also.
Oh, nice.
So I've done a little bit of everything from representing talent to closing deals to producing to writing, and it's been my entire career since I was 18 years old. And I'm only 22 now, so it's only been
I thought you were 21, but okay.
No, I had a birthday recently.
That's great. I wish I could be young again.
I'm Benjamin Button. I'm aging backwards.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're Brad Pitt.
There you go. Can you see the resemblance?
Yeah.
But I love this industry. You know, I came from a family in Ohio. You know, no one in my family knew anything about entertainment at all. So for me, it was really a dream, and it felt very impossible. Like, how do you accomplish that?
Yeah.
How do you start your career when you don't even know what the first steps are? And I just kind of put my head down and started working, and worked as hard as I could. I said yes to every single job. You know, some that I regret and some that launched me into other opportunities. And, you know, just have tried to keep a foot into the entertainment industry with everything I do, whether it's, you know, whether I'm running a law firm or whether I'm representing a comic book company. And when I met Jeff and Paul and they said, hey, we have this crazy idea. What do you think? I said, I think I'm in.
Cool.
First of all, they were so amazing. And, you know, as people, which is unusual to be able to sit down with real human beings and say, okay, this is a dream and we're all going to work together to make it happen. That's a real privilege. And, you know, the idea of working with fans, because this industry is all about fans, could not have been, in my opinion, a better idea.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That's fantastic. Yeah. David, you know, how about you and your background?
Sure. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. I mean, similar sense of it in that I grew up in Detroit, you know, thinking that only the sons and daughters of people who worked in the film industry could ever work in it. Yeah. But from an early age, my family was really into movies, a lot of foreign movies. I grew up watching Italian cinema and different kinds of things. Nice. And the other thing I was really into was Dungeons and Dragons and comic book conventions. So I was a pop culture nerd from the very early days. You know, I saw Star Wars in the theater when I was 13. My parents, God knows why, brought me to see The Godfather when I was 8. And I remember the scene with Sonny getting murdered and thinking, that's kind of cool. Anyway, to make kind of a long story unbearable, I worked in marketing in New York City, and I was training for the Olympics. I was a fencer, not watches, not stolen stuff, but swords. And a friend of mine asked me to come by to watch a University of Michigan football game at a bar. I had my fencing equipment, and literally a young lady came up to me and said, "Are you a fencer?" I'm like, well, yeah. Our company's making a movie about fencing. I said, modern fencing? Really? Yeah. I said, do you guys know anything about modern fencing? She went, not really. And I was doing pro bono work for the United States Fencing Association marketing. Suddenly I found myself working for the producer and then the director, and I got the bug. And one of the actors were Eric Roberts. You may know because he's been in some horror films as well. And F. Murray Abraham from Amadeus, who won the Best Picture. Those were my two students. So anyhow, I was living in New York, and I made the move to LA after working on a documentary for a director named Errol Morris, who's won the Academy Award a couple of times for Fog of War and Brief History of Time. And you know, I had a very similar experience to Terri. It's like surfing. You know, when you know that you love something, you will do whatever job you need to do to get there. And I did a lot of development work. I worked for Audrey Hepburn's son. Got to meet Audrey before she passed on. And I did a lot of different things. And I'm also a member of the Writers Guild. I've written a story for the second episode of Star Trek Voyager, time and again.
Cool.
And you know, and I produced several movies over the years. Nothing that people would remember. Probably one HBO, and another one was just independently financed. But I had met Jeff and Paul through a friend because I'd gone through the UCLA producers program, their film school, as a master's program. And Jeff had gone to UCLA, And he and Paul just wanted some consulting on the entertainment industry. And in fact, that's where Terri and I both connected with them, because I had gotten to know Terri.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been a comic book writer. Anyway, this goes on and on and on. Suffice it to say, I finally found a job where I could get paid to go to comic book conventions and dress up as characters. I was the first person to ever do cosplay as Red Miller from Mandy before the movie came out.
Cool.
And I got to actually hold the Beast, which is, there's a replica up there, but
yeah,
I have the real thing. And I cannot tell you how wonderful it is to be involved in a company that directly interfaces and, uses the information and has this back and forth between fandom, because they're the ultimate consumers of all this stuff. And it's shocking to me that in the world we live in today, that people don't use the technology that's available. Luckily, we have two Silicon Valley entrepreneurs who know all about that. And it'll be 5 years this March since we started. We started the day that the Jobs Act, which was a crowd equity funding law, went into effect that allowed everyday people to invest in a company. And when we got started, it was really fun. The first job I ever got in Hollywood was actually from Stan Lee. I worked on an Iron Fist script with him in the early 90s.
Oh, cool.
And stayed in touch with him. He became a friend. And when Legion M got started, I ran this thing by him, and his response is, "A studio owned by fans? That's such a good idea. I should have thought of it." And I said, "Can we quote you on that?" He went and was interviewed by the LA Business Times. We made the cover of LA Business. He is the king of pop culture. Yeah. So for us, there was a great deal of credibility that came along with that.
Yeah.
And, we luckily got to work with him on a project that people haven't seen yet. And we also organized through the fans. This had never been done. A handprint and footprint ceremony for Stan. And then after he passed away, we did the tribute at the Chinese. So our DNA is all about fandom. And, we're very pleased, and thank you for letting us come and chat with Cheddar Goblin, who I.
Oh, yeah. It's a privilege for me. Again, thanks to you for being so generous with your time. But as a fan of what you guys do, I thought when I heard about it, it's like, oh, this is revolutionary. It's like, the fans, can be direct investors because of the law that was that you cited, and then at the same time, there's this great back and forth communication, and it makes so much sense. Like you were mentioning, with all the social media tools and platform, it's like, why not? Why doesn't the other companies, do something like that?
Well, it was an experiment. I mean, when Terri and I started doing this, we did not know what would happen until that first movie came out, and suddenly all of these people started showing up at the theater to get together. I mean, that was the magic, is that it is this community of people who want to talk about the things they love, and they want to experience it together, which is why, the pandemic we're in it's an incredible challenge, but it's also an opportunity to figure out new ways for people to connect. I mean, this is an example of it right now.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. I was just thinking too, it's like, had you gone on to continue your fencing career, David, you could always hire Terri, as your attorney to, in case there's an accidental stabbing or something.
I would do that in an instant. I would have, but yeah. Terri, if that comes up, if I get a second career in fencing.
Yeah, I don't think I would know what I was doing if I had to represent you.
I'm just preparing myself for the apocalypse. I'm just going to protect everybody from Legion with axes and swords. I got to quite. Oh well, I guess I have to show this now.
So, yeah, definitely get that. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I think, some
You guys will like
friends.
Yes.
Oh my God!
And you
That's
see
cool.
what that is.
That is cool.
So that's Arnold and John Milius, both who are friends of Legion M.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, so when are you going to take on a Conan film? Come on, let's go.
We're working on it, but you have to understand. I think a lot of people think, that you can kind of come and just, redo things or take on projects, but once they have been made, rebooting is a very, very difficult situation, and getting sequels is very, very tough because of underlying rights. And actually, Terri, is the first person to say, we'd love to bring back Firefly.
Ooh.
But
I'm the dream crusher.
But you never know. The world is always changing, and opportunities sometimes present themselves. And the key is to be able to be in a position to have a group of people behind you, so that when you want to make these kinds of decisions, that you've got a grassroots base before you even step out the door. And that's why we so appreciate, all of the people who've invested in Legion M, and all the people who've just joined the community. You don't have to buy shares to do it.
Right.
And those who post on Facebook and say, hey, I have this great idea, let's remake this movie, or let's look at this book. David and I look at all of that. And we don't always report back, because it's not always appropriate for us to, because sometimes these conversations are, we have to sign NDAs and things like that. But you asking about Conan, I can tell you that David has been working really hard to try to make something like that happen, meeting with the stakeholders in that film and trying to make it happen for Legion M. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. But we listen to every single comment that people post and try to follow up on everything.
Yeah. As in regards to something like Conan, right now, I hear that there's licensing set up at Netflix to develop a TV series or a streaming series.
Yep.
And at the same time, when I look at the Legion M content that gets distributed, it's all original based. So, like, technically, I would argue that you already have your Conan in MANDY.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm not going to say much more, except that our path to approaching Conan was about bringing in some very, very specific directorial talent that does things differently than other people. So where we're always, you're absolutely correct. We want to find new voices.
Yeah.
And we want to encourage, looking at things in a way that you might not otherwise not. So for us, it would have been, King Conan, because Arnold would have been involved, and it would have been a very, very different story than what we had seen before.
Right.
You bring up a good point. Do we do original content? Do we remake content? And I think, the answer is, because we're so young as a company, the answer is we take opportunities as they come to us. And if creatively they make sense, and even if it's a remake or a reboot, that wouldn't necessarily be our first choice of project to do. But there are fandoms out there who are saying, can you please do this? And a lot of them are investors in Legion M. So it's not something we can ignore.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned earlier. It's wonderful that you give such a credence to what fans are saying and investors are saying, because that is your movie going audience. Have you ever gotten like a pitch that is just like so ludicrous? You actually had to just completely say, no, that is a bad idea.
All the time.
I don't think I've ever said anything's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Oh, there was one that was actually a bad idea, but we got a pitch, and I don't want to repeat it it was actually, as an American, it's offensive, but someone who was foreign, they didn't really get why was it offensive to Americans, but it was deeply offensive, and it was a pretty quick pass for us, but I could understand the context that it came in from. So it was a respectful pass, but it was one of those knee-jerk, like, oh my God, that would never get made in Hollywood.
And we always try to see what works and what doesn't work. We try not to use good and bad as much if we all help. Because, every story is the passion of somebody. Right. And you want people to still be passionate. But sometimes, as development executives for the last 20, 25 years, both Terri and I, a lot of our work is working with writers and helping them kind of guide their vision. If they have something unusual to bring to a story, you want that to be in the forefront, but you want to make sure that they don't do things that can, frankly, hurt their career.
Well, and then the real push-pull between, show art and show business, right? Because the art still has to do business. Otherwise, you're never going to get anyone to invest in any of your projects. So there is a pull to figure out, okay, what is the artistic vision? Can we find an audience for that vision? How can we bring this vision to the world in a way that's going to advance this person's career or this company's mission? And those are all questions that we ask every time a new project comes in.
Yeah. Mandy is the perfect example of that balance between art, commerce. I mean, we've sort of built our whole merchandise department from Mandy.
Yeah. I can totally see why. I mean, there's so many components of the film that, it's like watching an artful action figure just go to town. Yeah.
Can we talk about it? We don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't seen Mandy. You tell us how much.
Oh, sure. So everybody that's watching, go out and see Mandy. You're gonna love it. It's this fantastic, delightful, energetic, testosterone driven thing, but it's also a slow burn too. It was amazing. And the director, I remember he did was it Beyond the Black Rainbow?
Yes, Panos Cosmatos.
Yeah, and I love that film for a completely different aesthetic. But it certainly is. It's definitely one of those that's an acquired taste. So it's like, wow, taking some kind of art horror film like that and then combining it to this, just this, burst of, cocaine fueled energy, that is also that a little bit of a slow burn. I was just like, how the fuck does this work? It works beautifully.
I sometimes describe it as what would happen if Stanley Kubrick decided to do a 1980s revenge thriller.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that window of there's the visuals are so arresting. The music is so hypnotizing.
It is.
But he does it using this specific genre. And, I had actually known Panos's father, George Cosmatos.
Right.
George, did Tombstone and Cobra and not Rocky, but Rambo 2. So he was steeped in this very, very specific genre. And Panos grew up on those sets.
Yeah.
So people don't realize, but there was an homage being done for his father in this film. But he did it in a way I don't think anybody could have predicted. And I frankly think for Nick Cage, it's one of the most emotional and honest performances he's ever had. I mean, some people laugh at certain scenes, and I'm not going to say what that scene is.
Yeah.
But it's nervous laughter because you then see his, angst. Now, Cheddar Goblin, of course, is a side bit in the film. You
And
won't
the
miss him.
office is
You can miss him, though. But he does not interact directly with any of the characters in the movie.
right. Yeah, no, it's so clever, putting something like that in, as one of those peripheral, components that you see, throughout the film.
Well, it sets the universe. So Panos' universe, all of the films that we've worked on kind of operate in their own, potentially large universe.
Yeah.
Colossal, for sure. Nacho Vigalondo, was well known, for Time Crime and a lot of short films, which, by the way, is considered by physicists the most accurate time travel movie ever made.
And it's so good.
It's incredibly good.
Yeah.
And it's being remade, but not by. He's producing it. He's not directing it. But the idea of Anne Hathaway, ostensibly alcoholic Anne Hathaway, controlling a giant kaiju, attacking South Korea, is just
bonkers.
It's bonkers, and it set the stage for Legion M, because that kind of out of the box thinking. And by the way, the movie's about male toxicity. It's not about giant kaijus. And I recommend everybody see it. It's deserves to be seen. But that really set kind of this idea that we want to do genre. We are very interested in genre like horror and so forth, but we want to see if we can elevate it and sort of take it to a different, beyond its sort of B movie undertrappings. Sometimes these movies transcend. It's like Die Hard. Die Hard changed action films forever because you had such. Alan Rickman was so freaking cool, with his suits.
Oh yeah. Die Hard was wonderful. I mean, setting up that whole microcosm of just that idea of having an argument with your wife. I mean, that's kind of what it ends up boiling down to.
That's right.
Yeah. I just recently, I think 2 nights ago, my girlfriend Elise and I, we sat down and watched a film that you distribute, Save Yourselves. And I was like, wow, this is a great relationship movie. And you get the whole, alien aspect too. But it's just like, oh, this. We're like sitting there. It's like, wow, maybe we should talk to each other a little bit more like this, and definitely not like that. It was an interesting blueprint of the do's and don'ts in a relationship. So yeah, there's amazing subtext, but it's happening so close to something like that's happening so close to the surface. It's almost not subtext.
I really need to sort of jump in here because Save Yourselves, is a film that we didn't produce, but we got involved with a distributor, Bleecker Street. And the reason that we did that is because one of those tools that we had mentioned earlier, this idea of having 2 Silicon Valley founders and using algorithms and using different ways to communicate and get information from our investors, we did with this film. We used our app, Film Scout. And what we did is we loaded in, all of the data of all the films that were at Sundance last year. And, the log line, a photograph. And we sort of gamified it. And we asked, everybody, what would you like to see? And what do you think is going to do well? And we got 2 bits of information from that. One, Terri and I, going to Sundance is an ordeal no matter what. Right. If you're a development executive, you're not going to sleep because what you have to do is run this gauntlet of trying to see as many films as you can, worm your way into the ones that are hot and so forth. And what that information did is it allowed us, and obviously Terri and I are both geeks, so we can kind of see what things are going to be. But to have over 150,000 individual, votes and data to be able to say, Save Yourselves was the #1 film that our community wanted to see. So we knew they would get behind it. And we were able to go to Bleecker Street with that information And there is nothing more powerful than that, because nobody wants the person to brag about themselves. They always want somebody else to brag about the person that they're going to get into business with. Because that way they can say, oh, it's not my fault it didn't do well. All those people thought it was. So Legion M is the ultimate way to get film executives to get behind things.
But it's great for us too, because it allows us to listen to everybody who's involved in Legion M to tell us what they're most excited about. So, the top 20 films in Film Scout then become our hit list at Sundance. And those are the films that we're going to spend the most time seeing and meeting on and tracking. And it's extraordinary to be able to call someone and say, hey, your film's tracking really well in our Film Scout app. And, you should see what people are saying about it. And it's really exciting. And we'd love to sit down and meet with you. And it's an opportunity for Legion M to get out there and build these relationships with, young coming and new talent that are going to be the Spielbergs of the future. Yeah,
that's fantastic. One of our engineers and, my executive producer, Angela Joseph, is one of your main film scouts, and
love Angela. Mwah, mwah.
Well, and the thing is, and we know who is good at picking this stuff.
Yeah,
we can literally see, if the movie does well after the fact. We know the people who are good and have their fingers on the pulse. That is a very powerful thing to have.
And it's so cool, because those who have achieved elite scout status with us, when we have screeners that come in or scripts that we're not quite sure about, we'll pick a few scouts to send those to and say, can you please give us your feedback? We'd really like to hear what you think. And nobody gets to do that. That's so extraordinary for David and I to sit down with people and ask, what do you think? It's amazing.
Yeah, Angela's been popping up a couple of comments. I mean, you have a lot of film scouts on here with her right now, posting on YouTube and Facebook, as well as Legion M followers and co-compatriots. So,
hi, Dean. I just saw Dean.
I keep seeing Dean. Hello.
Yeah,
this is a really cool setup that it allows this. It's very
yeah. You can see a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's like a 7-second delay, but it's pretty phenomenal to see this platform and being able to engage with so many people all at once. Another sweet story that Angela presented to me before we went live was that because of Legion M, she, as a film goer and also as a film producer, gave her access to a world that would normally be much harder to traverse.
That's our mission. Our mission is to open the gates to Hollywood, and we do that in a lot of different ways. It's not necessarily that we're going to read every single person's screenplay and produce their movie. Right. Because that's really hard and expensive, and
I wouldn't sleep, and neither would you ever again.
Yeah, well, for us, it's about what are the things in Hollywood that would be exciting for people who are fans to participate in, and whether that's going to a Comic-Con and help volunteering at our booth and getting to have front row seats at our panels. Whether it's going to Sundance and having an open invitation into our lounge to hang out with whoever else is there. And a lot of times there are big actors and directors standing right next to you. Whether that's
go to a premiere of the George R. Martin and Nicholas Hoult for Tolkien.
Yeah.
Yep. Or a set visit if we're shooting a movie, pre-COVID, of course. But we're really, we really try to find opportunities for everyone to get involved in a way that's comfortable and exciting to them. So there are all kinds of opportunities. My favorite story recently was on ARCHENEMY. The director had a vision for the hero's car, And this movie is coming out December 11th, by the way. Oh, good, David, you already have a framed poster. The director had a vision of what the hero's car should look like and thought, okay, if we don't have to rent a picture car, we'll save some money. So we sent it out to the Legion and said, anybody want to volunteer their car, sign up here. The director's going to look through all the cars and cast one of your cars. And the director found this amazing El Camino that Matt Conklin volunteered, and we said we were going to break the car, and he said, let's do it. And he got to be on set for weeks. He ended up getting a walk-on role. He was invited to the cast party at the end of the shoot, and he is just awesome and amazing. And it was a really fun opportunity for him to see what it's like to make a film.
Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. That's
we want to change people's lives, or we want people to have the experience when working or investing in Legion M to really sort of see how things are done, you know. And we do things in a different way. We're very, very different from the companies that Terri and I have worked with. Traditionally, Hollywood is very insular. You know, there's because of the litigious nature of things, and and people always worrying about people stealing this or that. We don't operate like that. We really are very we try to put it all out there. Right.
Well, some of the conversations I had earlier, it sounds very collaborative. If there's something that might not work within for Legion M, it sounded like this might be good at this studio or this production company, or maybe Bill needs to take a look at this script and see if it's appropriate for for his endeavors or something to that extent. By
the way, that's the secret of Hollywood. It's all about who you know. And so I kind of view Legion as this gateway into mainstream Hollywood for a lot of people, because we read tons of scripts and books and ideas, and they're not all right for us, but we take meetings, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And sometimes someone says, I'm really looking for this one type of story and I haven't been able to find it. And chances are David and I have read that, and we can refer, even though it's not going to be our project, we can refer it.
And it creates those relationships.
That's wonderful. It makes it so much more endearing. So it doesn't, because so much of people, fans, somebody in the Midwest looks at Hollywood and it's just this, like you were saying, just this insular thing, that is out of reach, and you really have, it's like you continually hear this critique of. They're constantly making the same movie over and over again and just regurgitating that thing just because people go to see it. If you don't want to, vote with your dollars.
Right. But what's interesting is that you guys specifically have an interest in horror.
Right.
And Terri's a horror aficionado. I'm not an aficionado, but I appreciate. I was freaked out by The Shining so badly as a child that I really, really had a time. But the very first film set that I was on in Los Angeles in the early 90s is I got a phone call from Sam Raimi. So cool. Sam was working on Army of Darkness. And his brother, Ted, was my cousin's best friend. I mean, it's that kind of weird. You have no idea. And I get this phone call from him, and he says, "Well, you want to come out to the where somewhere in the middle of nowhere? Where they built a castle, and suddenly this thing is happening."
Yeah.
What I'm saying is never, don't do what I did. Don't make the assumption that the only people who make it in Hollywood are those who are completely connected. You can become connected. You become connected by being passionate about what you do and finding the other people who share that.
Yeah.
And horror is such a great place for new talent to come out of.
Yeah.
Because what it does at its core, it's people call it's an evergreen thing, because there are always going to be adolescents, and it's a social sanctioning of being able to be in the dark and grab each other when you get scared.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what culture you're in, it is the same throughout the world. And, we're constantly looking at, how can we approach the horror genre in a way that hasn't been approached before? So there were movies like Scream, which took all of the different, memes and all that stuff and found a way to play with that, you know. And I'm really excited about what the next generation is going to be. I mean, we've seen, there's been actually a lot of really interesting horror, directors, and Blumhouse has become a specialty. Get Out. Who would have thought that would have the kind of reach or the impact that it did?
Yeah, it's interesting. Something like that you wouldn't suspect coming from a horror film have such a cultural relevance and reverberate throughout the global film going community. That I started having conversations with some of my Black friends. Is like, holy crap! It transports the viewer and puts you in the position of the character, unlike I've ever been put in before. So drastically uncomfortable. I'm like, is that what slavery might actually feel like? And they're like, yeah,
it creates empathy because of that. That is such a powerful tool for social change.
Right.
I mean, the idea of systemic, prejudice. It's when you're in the middle of something, it's very tough to see, and that's what filmmakers do. I mean, I think, I don't know if I can speak for Terri, but, one of the reasons I wanted to go into the film world is because I loved film, but I understood that its power to help us, to warn us of don't do that or this is going to happen, or to stand by your guns, keep working hard, and something amazing will occur. These are the cultural stories that were told by shaman in front of fires, 50,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And movies are the way that we do this. I think religion was, but then movies just kind of beat it out. I don't know what's going to happen now, though. We're living through history. Right.
It's going to be interesting to see how we define it. With some of the projects that you do have in development, and you're going to go out one day to film, do you have those like COVID-19 protocols or pandemic protocols in place?
Yeah. So we really, when COVID hit, we pivoted on our development slate, and some of our live action projects became animated projects because we can still do animation, during COVID. And so, from Ghost of Manhattan, which we announced on our website, to things like Emperor's Blades, which we're considering doing as an animated series. Those are the types of considerations that we have to talk about right now. Like, how do we shoot this? And we have a couple of feature films we're looking at that are COVID friendly. So, it's small cast, single location, or limited locations. You can bubble everyone for a month or however long it takes. And you can shoot it safely, but it's a constantly moving target. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's working on a show for Viacom, and I was talking to him today about the COVID protocols, and just from a production point of view, what they have to put even their bit players through to get on camera is so hard. You have to wonder, is it worth it?
It adds a great deal of.
Yeah, we have to have an industry. We have to feed that. So many. What people forget about the film industry is that there are tens of thousands of people who are not at the executive level, but who are, working on the set, who work so hard. It's a job not unlike going into a factory. In a lot of cases, they're just happy. They're making something creative instead of
dream factory.
Yeah,
right.
But they work really hard, and they all rely on these shows and on these movies to continue shooting for their livelihoods. So we also have a responsibility to do whatever we can to make it safe for them and to keep production going.
Nice. Yeah. That's the contemporary issue, and I love that you guys are tackling it head on.
We have no choice.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's times like these, I think, with limitations, breed so much innovation. So transferring some films to animation, I was like, that's so clever. And so often too, like most animation gets associated with like children's, something fun and bubbly, musical, Disney.
Listen, that's
not
changed.
ours.
That is changed.
Right. I wouldn't expect that from you. I'd expect it's going to be a clear cut, probably narrative with very cult and genre specific tone.
Firmly adult.
Yeah, I mean, you should, everybody needs to think, what's happened in the adult animation world. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, there was Ralph Bakshi doing Prince the Cat and Wizards and Lord of the Rings. But now you've got Castlevania, you've got Blood of Zeus.
Yep.
These are adult pictures, and some of them are extremely gory.
Yeah. You got a lot of anime to think for a lot of that too.
Sure, and look at. The digital world is also something that's incredibly cool. If people have been watching Mandalorian, much of that has been shot on these sets that are literally, it's like the old days, it's a wall, but they put the digital representation up and suddenly you're on a set.
Yeah.
I believe, I have to believe that we will come out of this. It'll never be what it was, but it's going to be something interesting, and people want to be together. There is I mean, even if we're stuck in a pod, we have to jump in our plastic bubble and walk around, we're going to try to get close to each other.
Yeah, there's that sense of camaraderie when you go to a movie theater and watch that. You kind of join and mesh together as one over the love of the artifact being projected on the screen. It's so endearing, and it, as you mentioned before, it transcends so many boundaries if you connect on that emotional level. So it's
I miss being in a movie theater with everyone.
Oh, so much.
Someone just posted, we're able to see these messages, and thank you to everybody, Lori and Dean and everybody who are posting things. Someone just posted that they wanted to see more teen and preteen horror movies. And it was Tim. Thank you. It was Tim. So we're actually looking at one, and
cool.
We haven't committed to it, but the debate internally is, do we veer this to more adult or do we veer this more to teen? Because it's two totally different scripts. And I was trying to rack my brain, what horror movies out there fit into that mold? Like Poltergeist, by the way, is a PG movie, which I couldn't believe when I went back and looked at it.
Right.
It wouldn't be today, though.
You guys, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think of Monster Squad. I mean, there's certain.
I grew up on that.
Goonies had moments. It wasn't horror, but it's a really fine line. And the ones that were made that are memorable, it's like you really knew that the directors involved, that everybody involved in it, really put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah, most definitely. The Monster Squad, incidentally, I always refer to that as my Goonies. I love Goonies.
Really?
But when I was a small kid growing up in rural Colorado, we finally got a VHS video store like a block and a half from my house every week, and I'd walk in, little 11-year-old me, and he'd be like, Goonie or Monster Squad again. It's like, yep, Monster Squad again. So
That is
well,
awesome.
for me, Angela just brought up was the Lost Boys. The Lost Boys had a combination of the teen and young adult, and it just, man, oh man, that I think was that Shoemaker. Was
Shoemaker? Correct.
Yeah, I mean, everything, even the sax playing vampire. I mean, it just was.
Yeah, the sax man.
I love that movie.
The song too. Yeah, that was another thing we were talking about, like soundtracks and stuff. Mandy obviously has a lot of that, but like with Lost Boys, you have "Cry Little Sister," which is a really key, end of credit song that that lives on. Pet Cemetery from Pet Cemetery, Pet Cemetery from the Ramones, and I think there's also that. I wouldn't say it's a lost art, but it's something that's been isn't as commonly associated with today. But when you have films like Mandy, who really bring in a lot of music to really transport you, and
well, that was a special case. Johan Johansson. This was his last score.
Yeah,
he died very soon after the film was completed.
Yeah,
and he was, specifically all about like metal. That's his like he grew up with that. But he did the Theory of Everything and Sicario and
Arrival.
Last and First Man. Music is so important, and I think what had happened is a very small number of composers had sort of taken control of Hollywood, and it was rare to sort of see these scores. People would use found music instead of scoring. There is a genius, and if you get a great score, it's amazing. I think the person who did Joker was also a really good. I think
Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys have seen Blood of Zeus on Netflix, but the score on the show.
Oh, it's a feature film score. It's like Hans Zimmer, man.
Unbelievable. I want to buy the album version of whatever, he's whoever that, I don't know his work. I need to look him up, whoever that composer is. It's brilliant.
That's fantastic. I'll definitely have to check that out. We're starting to kind of wind down, but one thing I wanted to get to as well is Legion M is now delving into comics, and I participated on your Kickstarter with Girl with Her Name, and it's such a beautiful. Months ago I got it in the mail, not expecting it, and it's this nice magazine size comic with absolutely gorgeous artwork, and it's. Of course, I think film and TV companies should be, delving into other mediums of storytelling because it's all relevant. And
Terri, ran the premier comic book store like in the world, Meltdown Comics.
Wow, nice.
So there's a reason. All these things happen for a reason. Okay.
I'm not going to be a comic book geek. But what's so interesting about that, there's so much that's interesting about that project. It was an all-female artist team. It was based on a script. So we had a script that won Slam Dance that we adapted into the comic book. And now the comic book was so unique and visualized in such an artistic way, and we really encouraged the artists to think outside the box. And it was so inspirational to our director, Tanya Wexler. She just told me this week that the comic book inspired her so much that she went back and they're now rewriting the script based on the comic book.
Nice.
Which is incredible. Cool. Yeah.
That's very gratifying to us in particular, because Terri and I, this is the medium of comic book and graphic novels is very important to both of us. Because I got my start, as I said, with Stan, and I wrote for Image Comics. So for me, to be able to see something come to life. I'm just going to say this: like when we were at Sundance, in the comic book, the lead character of Girl with No Name resembles a particular actress very, very well. And that actress walked into our into our.
Not on purpose, by the way. It was accidental.
It was entirely accidental, and I went up to her publicist and I was like, I just have to show you something, and I just showed her a digital thing, and she's like, oh my gosh, she's got to read it, and
nice.
that actress may well become the star. We don't know yet, but
excellent.
It's when it's something like that is so inspiring when you
even like during this time too, like comic book is what a great way to convey stories, and so much quicker than film production, animation, but it's such a great way to convey some type of story that you want to share and get out there.
There's an economy of thought. It's like why animation is so powerful. Is there is no room for anything.
Right.
That is, you have to decide. The people who create comic books decide every single frame what you are seeing.
Right.
So it's very, very pure storytelling.
Yeah, I'm a self-published comic book artist and writer myself. We've been doing comic books based off of the Enigma, the sideshow performer. He's covered Naruto and puzzle tattoos. He used to be on X-Files. So he's a buddy of mine, and then my girlfriend and I have been producing like a kid-friendly comic line too, because now I have nieces and nephews. So it's like I want them to be able to read stuff that I produce, because all the horror stuff is very R-rated, and I don't want them to see that until they can start. They can smoke for themselves. So yeah. And with comics, it's great to have that out there, and it's easy to see how it can transition to other mediums, whether it's film, TV, video games, just based off of that template. I can't wait to see what you guys produce next as far as a comic book, even if it's just a comic book, by itself and doesn't get translated into another, platform or medium.
Well, Daniel, one of the things that's very interesting about Legion M, because we have such a large community that is into all these different things, is that when we take on projects, we think about how they can translate into other medium.
Yeah.
And, how do you find a way to really get everything you can out of a particular story? And there's so many different ways to do it. And it's exciting for us. Terri and I get excited about games, about merch, anything that brings you into it. I'm have a love affair with good old cheddar. And right now you can, in the movie, there's a commercial for Cheddar Goblin mac and cheese. You can literally go to our website and buy the mac, not just the mac and cheese that was used in the movie, but like really good mac and cheese. We went out and found the best mac and cheese that you can put into a box. And can I say that legally? I don't know. I'll probably get blamed for it.
I'm not going to hold you to the fire.
It's not false
advertising. That's something that's something nobody does. If we just showed Mandy again for the 2-year anniversary, and every person who went to a drive-in, we gave them a box.
Nice.
Because it creates community. That's what all this comes back to.
Right.
It all circles around to what's the community.
Yeah. And with that, we've been running the ticker at the bottom. It's the link to go for Legion M, for everybody out there that's watching that hasn't participated in Legion M. To
join the Legion.
Legion M. The link is at the bottom there. And just for a real quick reference, Angela loaded up a video here promoting Legion M. I think it's something that you guys produced pretty recently. Let me add that to the stream. And then let's see here. All right.
Hey everybody, it's Jeff and Paul, co-founders of Legion M, coming at you from the Legion M Academy. we just want to take a second and tell you how excited we are about what we're doing and how excited that for the first time in history, people like you have a chance to be a part of it.
But we also want to point out that there's risk involved. And so before you make the investment, we just want to make sure you understand what you're getting into.
Early stage investing is all about risk versus reward. You're getting in on the very ground floor of Legion M, which means that there's a ton of potential upside. We like to think that it's like investing in Walt Disney Studios, which just Walt and Roy.
But there's also some downside, right? So it could end up being more like an investment in Pets.com or Webvan or Jelly Cloud.
Jelly Cloud. Jelly Cloud.
You don't know Jelly Cloud?
I'm not on. The point is, statistically, most startup companies fail. And so it's not a place to put your retirement savings or your college funds.
I mean, we want to go to college.
Definitely want. Our advice to anyone considering investing in Legion M or any startup company for that matter is that if you can't afford to lose your entire investment, don't write a check.
Or write a smaller check.
Exactly. Because if you are willing to bear some risk and you do want to swing for the fences, we're investing our money, our jobs, and our careers on the fact that we can make this a successful company.
And we can promise you that we're going to do everything we can to make this the best investment you ever made. And also to hopefully have some fun with it.
So if after listening to all this, you're still interested, join us. Come on in. It's going to be a hell of a ride.
Let's do this.
That's so funny.
I love that video. It's so funny. That was one of the first videos that Jeff and Paul produced for Legion M back in 2016. And Legion M is more than an investment at this point because we're a production company and, you can join for free and just become a member of the community. But it's always been really important to them to make sure that people know what investing in a startup is like, because this is a startup.
They want to scare them. This was the scare them video.
Especially because back then, we didn't know, it was a hypothesis. We didn't know if fans would unite to come together and support projects. And 4.5 years later, I think we've proven the hypothesis, but it's still refreshing to see that video because they always want people to feel comfortable in the community. And part of that is just being transparent about what that could mean, which is really cool.
Nice. Oh, I really enjoyed that video. I think it, kind of lays it out because it's still such a fresh idea for so many people, jumping into this.
You're absolutely right. There are tons of people who are not aware of the changes in the law. There's tons of investors out there who aren't aware of this. But the reality is that the majority of growth of a company occurs prior to its public offering. Right. So for the last 80 years,
of our economy occurs prior to companies' public offerings.
Absolutely. Right. So the idea that only what are called accredited investors, which are essentially millionaires, people who've got $1 million in the bank and are pulling in a ton of money, they're the only ones who get to do this. It made no sense. And Jeff and Paul felt so strongly about it. They wanted to create a company from the ground up to allow anybody who was passionate to invest. And Kickstarter kind of gave us that, we think of ourselves as Kickstarter with shares. So instead of getting a t-shirt, we're actually giving them ownership in the company. And when the company does well, the stock price goes up. And it has continued to do that.
I think your template is a little bit stronger than Kickstarter in the sense that your community is so much more ingrained and so much more engaging. Kickstarter is a wonderful platform too, but after the incentives go out and stuff, most of the correspondences are just over emails and social media, and then that kind of goes away. But with you guys, it's in person, it's phone calls, it's video conferencing, it just feels so much more engrossing.
Well, it is, and it's the hardest thing right now is because we can't There's nothing that Terri and I like more than actually
Right.
being out amongst everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Having a premiere and traveling around and going to meetups, because it's not just LA and New York. The people who love film are everywhere. And
Angela, had a bunch of photos from some of those meetups too. Like, I think this one might have been
that's awesome. That's David.
Nice. That's awesome.
I make everybody look like a hobbit. I'm so tall.
Like here's Angela with Jeff, I think. And so it's really fun. I think there's another one at a premiere. Because she gets around and works with you guys a lot. So
she does. She's there's Angela and
Dean Devlin from Independence Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we didn't even get to talk about Bad Samaritan, which is a horror thriller with David Tennant as a serial killer.
Right.
A really scary one. Anyway, we could probably talk all day, but
I think I should probably let you guys go. But thanks so much for being so generous and sharing so much about that. I learned a lot. I hope everybody else that was watching this, also learn more about Legion M, and will go and contribute and engage and be part of this wonderful community that supports genre films and genre related material. I think it's absolutely it's wonderful, and it's something that's needed during this time.
Well, thank you for offering to have us come on board. I've really missed this. I like doing it.
Hopefully when we can all meet up in the future, I'll be able to see you guys at film premieres and events, and hopefully we can have you out at the Colorado Festival of Horror out here in Colorado. I'm actually in Alabama, so that's a misnomer, but normally I'm in Colorado. Angela can attest to that.
Alabama's good too.
What's that?
I said Alabama's good too.
Yeah, for now. Yeah, but thanks so much. Terri, David, thanks for being so generous with your time. Greatly appreciate it. To everybody that's out there watching, thanks so much. Thanks for all your wonderful comments. Keep supporting great independent art. And to my producers, Sumner Twins Talent, Angela Joseph, Stephen Santa Cruz, and Amanda Armstrong, thank you so much for participating and supporting this. And if you guys just hang out for a minute, but everybody, be kind, be good out there. We love you. Have a good night.